Melissa Duclos is the author of the novel Besotted. Her work has appeared in the Washington Post, Salon, and Bustle, among other venues. She's the founder of Magnify Small Presses, which I love, a monthly newsletter celebrating small press books, and co-founder of Amplify Women's Voices, Louder, a series of writing retreats aimed at putting women writers on the path to publication. She has an MFA from Columbia University and lives in Portland, Oregon.
Thank you. Oh, God, get off my stage. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Mo and Josh, and thank you to Malvern Books for having us. This is such a fun event. So I'm also going to read about love. Mine, I think, is maybe a little bit less heartbreaking than yours. So I'm going to be reading from my novel, Besotted, and I think what you need to know going into it is just that the book is set in Shanghai. My narrator, Sasha, has been living there for a few years, and Liz has just arrived and lives with Sasha. Love didn't run around at night, searching the faces reflected in plate glass for someone she used to know. Love didn't get her feet dusty, couldn't tolerate the creep of grime up her shins, the slick of puddles on her soles. When love stood quite still, as she so often did, she could feel the pull of mountains and rivers and half-constructed skyscrapers and 8-lane highways and movie theaters and the quiet parks with their untouched grass circling around her bowed head. Was I scared of love? Of course. In my experience, she was overly forward and easily frightened, the cause of both self-doubt and delusions of grandeur. But maybe this time things would turn out differently. Isn't that what people always believe? I knew that left unrequited, love could never be happy, but there were limits to what I could do to satisfy her. Love spoke softly, and so I tried to quiet the world around us. I stopped making plans to go out. No more drinks at O'Malley's or Zapata's, Blue Frog or M on the Bun when we were feeling fancy. No more dancing at Park 97 or Guan-Di. No more house parties with costume requirements. Fall edged closer to winter, and I promised love we would hibernate. Why don't we go out? Liz suggested more than once. But love was too fragile to entrust to a crowd of expats. Liz didn't go without me. There were the afternoons when she brought a book to Starbucks to unwind by herself, but she always came home for dinner. Until one night she didn't. I set the table for two, but the plate across from me remained empty. Love sat beside me, tapping a long fingernail against the oak table. I cleaned up, but left the wine out because drinking seemed my only option. Sipping wine and staring at the front door, I rehearsed my opening lines. I was worried about you, or I thought you'd be home for dinner, or how was your night, or well, 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 or howdy. As it turned out, I had a mouthful of wine when the door finally opened. I swallowed quickly, then hiccuped and coughed. Liz gave me a funny look. Hi, she said slowly, looking as though she expected me to pull a weapon from under the table. I tried for non-threatening, wishing I had a book beside me, or at least my phone, anything to disguise the blatant desperation that shrouded me. Wine? She looked relieved. It was, I guessed, a normal thing for me to have said. Long day, she asked. Weird one, I answered. Weird few weeks, actually. I was wondering, have you cooked everything in China yet? She laughed, and I realized she was drunk. What did you do tonight? I had dinner with Dorian. Oh. What did you do? She looked around the room as though there might be evidence of something. Just hung out for a while, read a bit, cooked some dinner. Cooked you dinner, I wanted to say, but stopped myself. Are you boycotting restaurants now? I laughed nervously. No, I'm sorry. I wanted to make things homier around here, so you wouldn't get homesick and leave. Don't you think you should have asked me what I missed from home before you started trying to recreate it? It might have sounded chastising, but she was smiling, so I chose to think she felt touched. Okay, so what do you miss? Say snuggling, I will. Say secrets in the dark. Liz's long brown hair fell over her face and as she stared down at the table, and I longed to grasp it and pull it toward me. Her fingers tapped against the stem of her wine glass, and I wanted to lick them, imagining they would taste like honey. We sat in silence. I hated roommate small talk. Why did you move here? She laughed. Her laugh, God, like glass shattered in ecstasy. I was wondering when you were going to ask me that. It's such a boring question. I usually try to avoid it. But it's weird, I guess, that I have no idea. Yeah, it's weird that I have no idea either. I shook my head. I don't buy that. You're not the type to move across the world on a whim. Right, so what type am I? You're more thoughtful than that, I answered slowly. I wanted my words to stick, to have a hand at shaping her. You have plans. It was more of an anti-plan, I think. Everything in my life had been so predictable, you know? Graduate from high school and go to a media college near the really good college where my high school boyfriend was going. Date for 4 years and then follow him to New York. Let him pay for dinners because he's making tons of money working in finance while all I can find is a waitressing job at a shitty diner. Because what the hell do you do with a degree in English anyway if you don't want to teach? And I really didn't want to teach. But you're teaching now. Right, but teaching isn't really my job here. Living in China is your job. Exactly. I wasn't doing anything in Brooklyn. What happened with Mr. Finance boyfriend? Liz shrugged. Brian and I started dating when we were 15. It didn't seem possible that we'd end up together. So you and Brian broke up and the next obvious step was move to China? She laughed. Yeah, that's the part where the logic gets fuzzy. I knew I wanted to get out of New York, but I didn't know where to go. Going home would have been defeat. Anywhere else in the States, I'd need a reason, a plan. It seemed like moving abroad was a plan in itself. I took the first job offer I got. I'm glad you're here. This time we did make eye contact and I made the most of it, shooting sparks. Thanks. Me too. I love you too, is what I heard. We should have more wine, I said, and sit on the couch. I felt like a teenage boy waiting to yawn and stretch my arm across my date's shoulder. Ridiculous, but somehow it was working. It may seem that love gets lost easily, wandering off after the aroma of pork dumplings, pan-fried and served steaming, or running frightened from the crash and pop of fireworks meant to scatter only old ghosts. Most of the time, though, love stays put. If she seems lost, it is only because she can be hard to recognize. Have you ever been in love? Liz asked. I could have told her about Alice, whose gloss-coated lips turned me into a child with the sticky remnants of illicit candy around my mouth. After Alice, there was Heather, who tasted of mushrooms sometimes, other times grapefruit, who rubbed peppermint lotion into my feet, up my calves, whose metallic green car reflected the sunlight off its trunk as she drove away. No, I answered, because the truth was too complicated to explain. I have, she replied, and I shrugged. Have you ever had sex with a stranger? I snorted. I mean, not a complete and total stranger, I don't even know your name kind of thing, but definitely, I just met you tonight and we've talked for an hour and I'll never see you again. I haven't. She wasn't pausing for stories. Have you ever had sex in public? I blushed, but Liz's eyes were still closed, so it was okay. Are we playing this game now? Yes. Fair enough. Semi-public, I guess. Have you? Yes, your turn. I knew exactly what I wanted to ask. 2 more questions and I'd do it. Have you ever had sex in a car? I said. Yes. You? Yes. Have you ever had sex on a plane? No. Me neither. Your turn, she pressed, and I exhaled loudly. Have you ever kissed a woman? No, she answered, and I could tell from the pause at the top of her breath that it was a different kind of no. Have you? No, but I've always wanted to. This was a lie I shouldn't have told. Me too, Liz squealed and sat up. She was so drunk I wondered for a moment if I should stop the game, but I believed because I wasn't a man I had nothing to force on her. So, should we? I suppose we have to, I answered. Okay, wait. Liz adjusted her posture, pulled her hair away from her face, licked her lips. Okay, I'm ready. I leaned forward. Liz met me halfway. We pressed our lips together, softly, top lip on top lip, bottom on bottom. At first we didn't move. She was like a child, playing at something she didn't understand. And then suddenly, she understood. Our lips parted and I pushed my tongue through until I felt the gleam of Liz's teeth. We separated a moment later, the kiss that satisfied the constraints of our game complete. We leaned in again. Have you ever kissed a woman a second time? Have you ever run your tongue along her jawline before pressing your mouth to the quick pulse in her neck? I paid attention for signs of hesitation, a nervous laugh or a gasp that sounded more like terror than pleasure, a flinch or a pulling away, but noticed none. My fingers lifted her shirt slightly and touched her waist, tracing delicate patterns of curling ivy around her belly button. In response, she ran her hand up the back of my neck, nestling long fingers around the roots of my hair and pulling. Not so hard that it hurt, but it surprised me nonetheless. I was expecting more timidity from her. You should take this off, she whispered, tugging at the bottom of my shirt, surprising me again. It was the first either of us had spoken since the game had ended, or maybe this was still part of the game. I felt a sudden urge to retreat to my bedroom where the curtains blocked out the neon twilight shining through the windows. I wanted to bury us under my thick comforter, never mind the sweat, so we could feel but not see our bare legs pressing against each other, our soft bellies, our breasts. I was afraid to pause, to give her any time to question what we were doing, but I was more afraid of staying where we were. Though our living room was entirely private, our front door locked, I felt too exposed. I took her hand and stood up. It could be a test, a chance for her to giggle and hiccup and tell me she was getting sleepy. But she hooked her finger in my belt loop. She followed me to bed. Love remained curled at the end of the couch, slicked with sweat and shivering. The next morning, when I woke up, she was gone. As you heard about Mo, she's got this new awesome podcast called No Love Signs, and we're going to take some questions from the audience if people have them, but first we're going to answer a dating advice question from Mo's podcast. Do you all think, should we like turn our chairs? Or?
Yeah, let's turn our chairs.
Yeah.